Hello, and welcome to Financials Podcast Future Rich. I'm your host, Barbara Ginty, and I'm also a CFP, which is a certified financial planner. And I am here with my guest today, Charlotte. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Barbara. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for coming on. As our listeners know, I've been featuring some really badass female financial advisors. So I'm excited to talk about your career and share your history. So why don't you give our listeners a little bit of your background?
Okay, well, I am also a CFP. And I'm the owner and managing partner of Silver Penny Financial Planning. You can look us up. We're on all the platforms. And my background is actually started in an insurance company a long time ago. And then I worked for a 401k company. And I was an enroller, essentially helping people to choose their 401k. And I know this is hard to believe, but before you just did it online, you used to go into like a big room and there'd be somebody there that would be educating you. So you just didn't you have the like sweaty palms when you're like, oh my gosh, which allocation should I pick? We would actually kind of go in, give a presentation, and then sit down with you and help you choose what would be the most appropriate for you. And I was super young when I did that. So I was helping people figure that out when I myself didn't fully understand like probably what was the best course forward. But I took a bunch of tests and licenses and started doing that. And then I decided I didn't want to be necessarily just like a quick transactional type of arrangement with people, but that I wanted those meaningful relationships that you saw on TV, like, it's like the wedding and then the person who's like, oh, the financial advisor is like at the wedding. And so I wanted to be more intimately involved in people's financial lives for the long haul.
So did you, like, when you came out of college, you were like, I want to go into some financial role? You just like weren't sure which way? Or
No, I have a degree in Spanish and one in communication. So I have 2 degrees, and I was going to go work in business communication somehow internationally using Spanish, or be a flight attendant. None of that happened. I was in college during September 11th, and I graduated in 03, which is after there was a huge tech bubble, right? So right when I graduated, jobs were very hard to come by. And most of the people that I graduated with, and I graduated some very smart people from an engineering school, did not have jobs coming out. And so a large insurance company was like, do you want to be a claims adjuster? I'm like, sure, great. Sounded like a great job. So I sat in a cubicle, very much like Office Space. If you've ever seen that movie, the guy across from me was named Milton. And I was like, wow, my life is starting, but yet it feels over at the same time.
Yeah, so it doesn't, not what you envisioned.
Sat in a cubicle and just help people determine who was at fault in accidents. And it was not fun.
Oh gosh.
Because half of everybody I had to talk to hated me because I have to tell them like, hey, it's not your fault. We can't pay for the damage. So it took me about 15 months to get out of that. And then the next kind of jump was, because you have some background, why don't you work for, and I also taught spinning, which I love. This was way before Peloton. So I taught spinning, and people in my spin class were like, oh, you're so good at sales. You should be in sales. And then one of them actually worked for a company that was a 401k company. And so they helped.
Okay.
And also, be remiss without saying that my father's a financial advisor, but I was never going to do what he did. Never. Little did I know, in a different state, I was slowly walking my way into that path.
I think that's really ironic because if you had asked me post college if I was going to do what my dad was going to do, I was like, absolutely not. I will never do what my dad, because now do what my dad does.
Yes,
it's ironic.
Same. My dad doesn't do it anymore either. It was a hard no. I was the summer intern. I hated it. I was never gonna do it. So I started to walk parallel in different things, and then realized my skills, talents, and interest. And then I quickly learned at the insurance company, it didn't matter how hard I worked, I made the same money every single week. And I think there's an entrepreneur that's always been inside of me and my heart. I always want to learn more, strive more, do more. That's just part of my makeup. And so it became frustrating to me that effort wasn't rewarded, right?
Right. Didn't matter if you went in and drank coffee all day or if you went in and worked your tail off. There was no difference in your income.
And it was difficult for me to be around people that were okay with that and they just didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
same kind of like drive. And so it was a combination of several things, but I knew that big environment was not for me. Ironically, part of my story actually has to deal with the fact that I wanted a promotion at that company, and it was actually another female who denied me that position. And so that was my first example as a very young woman in business that women don't, back in the day, I think things have changed, didn't always help each other. That burned me really bad. That was difficult for me. And that was the moment where I was like, you know what? I want to be in charge. At some point, I want to be in a situation where it is the decisions that I make that affect the career trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say that combination, and also made a vow that I wanted to help other women at that point, because that was an early career burn that was a blessing in disguise, because had she given me that job, I might be sitting at a boring insurance company.
It's
Yeah.
funny when you look back, you're like, even though it taught you a valuable lesson, right? That, and I experienced that as well. Sometimes women are the worst in corporate environments, like not your advocate, like your biggest enemy. A terrible lesson to learn, but yes,
Yeah.
you could
And
be
this was,
sitting in an insurance company now.
yeah, this is almost 20 years ago. Like
Oh,
when I
wow.
looked, so the world was different for women. But the funny thing is we were taught, I mean, I grew up with like business Barbie, so I thought that women could do anything and the glass ceiling had already been shattered. And so that was a very big surprise, to get in the workforce and to
Mm-hmm.
have that happening. So yes, that's a long version of how I ended up, and then the 401k situation. And that was fun because we got to travel. So we would travel to the 401k, various, like they did a lot of hospitals, they did some hotels, entertainment, and a bunch of people in their 20s would all be dropped off, and we would help people 10 hours a day in like a hospital cafeteria signing up for the 401k, and then we would go out all night, and it was fun.
So it's fun.
Mhm.
And then how did you transition from the 401k company was the next step into private wealth?
So I had some life changes around that time. I had worked on the part of that company also serviced the North Carolina State Pension Opt-out Plan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so in the state of North Carolina, professors could choose whether they're going to go into the pension or what's called a 401a, which is a technical pension situation. And I did that for a while. And then after that, I got married and decided I wanted to be an advisor. So it was time to make a transition. There was a place in Atlanta close to my family that the one of the advisors was retiring, and I could be like an associate, sort of like a
Mm-hmm.
learning kind of advisor. That was in the great year of 2007.
That was a fun year.
I became a financial advisor in 2007.
The timing wasn't great on that.
No, I would like to give that girl a hug. The next 2 years was a trial by fire. And when I tell you the phones, this was also the time when the phones like would ring and you just answer them. Very different. Another concept, like if my child right now had a phone. The funny thing is when you go to a hotel room with children, like my son just like picks up the phone and picks up it because they've never seen a phone in their house. Yeah, but the phones would ring, 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 and I just have to pick it up. I think I was 27, 28.
Mm-hmm.
No, 26, 26, 27. Pick up the phone and people will be crying, people will be upset, people will be angry. And this just went on for it was a
A
very
while.
prolonged, yeah, you lived it.
Yeah.
And so we told people like it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. So you learn very early in my experience in the insurance company dealing with the general public and just kind of people's like raw emotions and dealing with so
Mm-hmm.
many people so fast kind of prepped me for that. But in reality, there's nothing that can prep you for that. And so I just did it. Like we all kind of worked. I don't think I made that much money, but I wasn't necessarily in a situation where I had to get a lot of clients. I was more in a servicing kind of financial advisor
Mm-hmm.
role. There were some 401k, there was some like institutional kind of businesses that that was also part of my job, is I would go once a week to service the hospital and 403
Okay.
Bs. So there was employer sponsor plan as part of that firm.
What was your biggest takeaway? So I worked through 2007, 2008. I worked on the institutional side, so it's very different, but like our clients were going out of business left and right because we're dealing with hedge funds. So they were just disappearing going out of business, which was terrible. So as a salesperson, I couldn't do anything because my job was to sell to hedge funds and they were just trying to a lot of them went out of business. Some of them were trying to hang on, but they definitely didn't need me to sell them anything in that moment. So it was an awkward time to be a salesperson because you can't call people that are in distress, right? And say, hey, I have
Yeah.
software, an algorithm. They don't care about it. They're trying to survive. But I didn't work it from a retail standpoint, right? From dealing with the consumer. What was your biggest takeaway from working through that with consumers? Because
Oh gosh,
we're going through another tough time now, right?
we
So
are. It's a very
people
tough
are
time
also
now.
very, yeah.
Yeah. I think the tough thing too at that was that people's emotional relationship to their money is greater than they'll ever tell you until it gets tested.
Mm-hmm.
And so behavioral finance has always been an interest of mine, but that was what I would call that was like learning behavioral finance and like through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
And because we did the employer sponsor side, there would be a lot of people that you wouldn't have that like financial plan or intimate relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be very transactional emotion, like I'm upset, I've lost all this money. And I also learned that people's understanding of the bigger, longer picture wasn't there. Now, economically, that time period of like losing houses and there was other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That were going on. So it's hard to talk about it in an isolated retail, how they felt about that, because usually that was just a data point to something else that was going on,
Mm-hmm.
like losing a job or, losing a house or at risk or underwater, so it was just very, people were grasping, people were desperate. I think the lesson that I learned too, I kind of promised myself when that happened again, because it's pretty clear if you choose this as a career, it's not if, but it's when. And so I
Mm-hmm.
said, when that happens again, I will get a therapist for myself because I didn't at that time. And it was such a stressful, like you tell everyone it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're the emotional support. And then what happens is you drive away after 8 to 10 hours of doing that and it collapses on you emotionally. And so it created a lot of anxiety for me. I now know what that is. You know what I mean? I now kind of
Yeah.
understand it and feel it and can recognize, and also I've done a lot of research study and work on money as energy
Mm-hmm.
and behavioral finance and how we kind of feel. So I got myself educated on how people would react a little bit better. I took a great class last year, financial therapy. Yeah, I found a financial therapist like, hey, can you give me 4 or 5 classes that I can better understand my clients, what they're going through, things that I can say, things that I can help think through, like
Mm-hmm.
empathy training. There's a lot of things I learned, but
That's
that
incredible
money,
because a lot of people
yeah,
got knocked out of the industry then. Like I've talked to
they did.
many people who said, well, I was an advisor. I used to be an advisor. And I'd be like, well, why aren't you anymore? And like even just recently I heard, well, I started my career in, 2006 or 2005 and I didn't survive 2007,
Yeah.
2008.
I mean, there's no reason that I had some privileges and advantages. I was married, and so my income at that time was not, it was like hardly anything. But I had also set myself up financially to live below my means. So it
Mm-hmm.
didn't, I wasn't doing extremely well, but I also didn't have these, like, I hadn't had the lifestyle creep at that point, that I had to deal with it. And plus, it's like a hamster wheel when you're in it. Like, I don't know if at that time I thought about, like, I should not do this. I should do something else. There was nothing else available to do. So it's just like you go to work every
Right.
day, just try to help people. So it was just hanging on. It wasn't thriving. There wasn't a lot of building going on,
Mm-hmm.
it was surviving, not thriving.
And then so you made it through that working for this woman.
Yeah.
And then and then at some point you merged with your dad or you bought his business or
Yeah, no. And so then I became an employee of that firm,
okay.
and the model there is that they sort of that was where I worked in 2007. When I came down, somebody retired, and they said we need help on the employer sponsored book. So you basically, that's your job. Like you go out and do the employer sponsored. And if you can get any clients on your own, like great, do that. And then I realized it and have the skill set to, so I would partner with people. Like, hey, can I do the financial plan? So I learned, and during after that kind of got out of that, I started studying retirement income and like how retirement income the newer kind of thoughts and processes about that after what had happened and how things had changed and how that was something that, it's not the accumulation phase, but the distribution phase. So I started studying that and learning about that and then helping other advisors. So I'd sit and kind of a paraplanning role, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I was an advisor, but when I look back, I was technically learning how to be an advisor, right?
Yep.
There wasn't a training program. It wasn't a large firm. So I would just sit with people and then they would cut me in on some of the clients. I had very few clients of my own. I would get a
Okay.
few every now and then. And I had children quickly after that. And so it's sometimes I think that that was sort of a lost decade in terms of like growth period, because the industry at the time was not really like favorable and friendly to mothers, and I didn't know how
Mm-hmm.
to be a working mother. And so that was just sort of again, just like I worked out some situations where, hey, can I work kind of to help you on this case? I'll do all of this. You
Yep.
can kind of give me the minimal. It was not a growth period. It was just
Okay.
like
Like a
a
learning,
survival.
like a
Yep.
foundation. You were putting together a foundation.
Yeah. It was like a true kind of apprenticeship
Mm-hmm.
where I realized my strength at that time would be to learn and understand. If I could sit in as many client meetings as possible and watch the experienced seasoned advisor, how they interact with the client, what they did, and how they did financial planning, then I could go back and also I could work the technology.
Okay.
So I would say, hey, gather all this information. I will do the input and I will create the retirement plan.
And so, yeah, no, absolutely. Because I will say that I do think with the industry, which is interesting, is as we both have the CFP and you learn a lot. It's a very hard exam, and you learn a lot. And we have to have a lot of designations, but you learn, I would say, the most in client meetings.
Oh, yeah, you got to get a lot of reps. And that's what I
Yeah,
say, like anything that you can do, if you want to be an advisor, get in client meetings, sit in client meetings, take notes. Like you have got to get a lot of reps, because it's learning how to be an advisor is a very nuanced difference than what you learn in a book.
yeah, I agree. And so now after that, so you had that like foundation, like starting with her, moving over, being the employee sponsored, sitting in being semi paraplanner, and then getting those fundamentals. And then, because you have a very big business, lucrative business. So how did you get there?
So once again, let's went through like a triggering event where the big employer sponsored case that I worked on just went out to bid and that we were not going to be involved in it anymore. So at that point, it was like, okay,
Uh-oh.
yeah, another situation that went away. And so at that point, I was ready to kind of go out and get more clients and develop that. And my dad at the time, I was like, let me buy this off of you, kind of what's left, and see what I can make of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so there was other partners in the business, but I purchased a book of business and made a business plan essentially to take that and make it more of an take kind of what the context that we had from the institutional employer side and make it more of a traditional wealth management firm.
Okay.
And I had studied the industry a little bit at that point of how to do that.
And when you bought the book, and the book was predominantly from your dad or his other partners?
Predominantly from his dad. The other partners were
Okay.
not selling. They were
Okay.
not interested in, and it is looks nothing like the business that we have today. So I'm cautious to, how I describe it, because it was, things were changing in the marketplace, and a lot of these employer sponsored plans that used to have advisors, like I said, you go out and you would service
Mm-hmm.
them, but
Yeah.
it was shifting away from that to a more online tech platform. And that was happening the entire time slowly that I was there. So I purchased some of the like contacts and some of those relationships and then converted it over into what it is today, which is a more of a traditional wealth management firm.
And then how long, when you purchased it from your dad, was your dad like, okay, I'm retired, or he still had other clients?
Yeah, so that was in 2017. So at that point, I
Oh,
said, okay,
it was in 2017. Oh, I didn't realize that. For some reason, I thought it was longer ago.
we lost the case in 2016.
Okay.
So we sort of had a triggering event where like something
Yeah.
had to change.
Yep.
And he was like, I don't really, he was at a point in his career where he was like, And I was at a point where at my career where I was like ready. I put in the, they say 10,000 hours to
Yep.
become an expert.
Yes.
I was ready. I had the interest, like kind of that entrepreneurial like spirit in me was really, my kids were a little bit older and like self-sufficient. I feel like my energy, I was like regaining some of my energy, and I started to study like, I started listening to all the kids' podcasts and studying people in our industry that were very successful and like what they had done. And I became a student of the industry for a little bit, before I did this. And I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do, business plan. I approached him with it. He's like, okay. He worked part-time for 3 years.
Okay.
But he handled none of it all became the management. All of a sudden I had to switch from just being an advisor, and leading up into that point, I had started getting my own clients and, was leading a lot of meetings, but then I became the business owner. And so,
which, as we know, is a very different role.
Yeah. So being a business owner, being a practitioner of anything is just separate. So at that point, I did that and was still meeting the clients, but I became the business owner. And then within the first 10 months of that, the business partner and I shared like staff. We kind of had a firm. We did have a firm. So we had our name, we shared space, we shared staff, we shared everything, marketing. He decided he was going to leave. So he left.
Was this like I'm going to leave in 6 months, or was this like a more abrupt trigger, another triggering event?
So the office building sold. And so in November, the office building sold, and he was supposed to be looking for a new location, and he instead was looking for a new RA. And so within a 10-day period, I found out we're going to be office homeless. Our brand was no longer valid because it was like last name and last name. And I couldn't afford the staff as they were at that point, because half of the revenue for the staff.
Right. You could be like, I can do 50%.
Yeah. So that all happened within a 10-day period.
Gee, that's as a business owner, that's a lot to happen. And I feel like we might have similar luck. I feel like my luck is when it rains, it's like a tornado. Like I don't get like drizzles or like a quick storm. Like when things go wrong in my life, it's like full on. That sounds very similar. That was like everything that probably could have gone wrong went wrong in the 10-day span.
Yeah, totally. And it was at November. So
before year end, which in our business is a very important busy time of the year.
Year end is important. And then like Christmas is like if you celebrate Christmas, like the Super Bowl for mothers, you've got to like.
I didn't think about that from a mother's standpoint. I was just thinking like R&D, tax harvesting, making sure your clients' accounts are prepared for the year to end.
Well, you also have to create the magic that is like,
that is Santa Claus.
Well, that is everything, like all of it. Yeah. So we moved into a temporary office space the Saturday before Christmas, in 2017. I had to fire everybody. And I was the one that had to do it, except for one person who I'd hired when I came on.
Because the business partner just was like, peace, see you later. This is your problem.
Yeah.
Did you ever have words with that person? Did you ever say what? I mean, maybe not worth it, but that's a really terrible thing to do, to leave you with the responsibility of letting everyone go before a holiday. When he felt
bad. He turned white as a ghost when he told me. But you know what? I think there's some writing on the wall sometimes that it would have, like, I think eventually we would have probably gone different ways. And it was an amicable split, but that was ripping off the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
So
which there is benefit to doing it all at once.
Correct. And that motivated me, inspired me. And I can't, it was Claire Kurtz, who works for me now, is my chief of staff. But at that time, it was she and I said, like, I kind of told her, I was like, listen, like, we got to start over. Like, are you with me? And she and I together. So I had her as a support system, and we kind of went through that together. And it's like going through the trenches with somebody. You very much, and you have a choice to decide to build something the way you want to build it. You hire the people that you want to hire. It's this saying that I think guided me through that time. It's like, not what got you here is not going to get you there. And so what got us to that point was no longer going to take us into the future. And sometimes it is hard to realize that when you're in the daily repeat, grind,
Mm-hmm.
repeat, grind, repeat. And so when you're forced with fresh eyes, because the situation is one of a crisis,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like a strong word, but when you have a triggering event, you are then forced to do that. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely like crying in the bathtub, like Sarah McLachlan on,
There
like,
would, if it was me, there would be a lot of tears. My first couple of years in business were brutal. We didn't lose our office, we lost our lease. We could have renewed the lease, but it was it wasn't. I would be happy to be the one who owned the lease. I didn't want to be the lease. I didn't want to be leasing with that lease. It just was very prohibitive and potentially very costly. So I did a whole bunch of things in like a 24-month period, but not in 10 days. And I found it to be overwhelming in a 24-month period.
yeah. Well, that was when I found out the information.
Yeah.
So then it took like, it was a trying time too. Also had a very huge business loan.
From buying the book, right? Yeah, I am one who also bought from my father. And so I had I still have for another 10 years a very big loan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad is from the Bronx. He's parents are immigrants, so there was no, the deal was I bought a business. That was my deal. He had no one to buy a business from. So I definitely paid a higher multiple
Yeah.
than anyone I've ever heard. And everyone told me I was like significantly overpaid. And my dad stands by the fact that he gave me a deal. And I'm like, I've never met anybody who agrees with you. And he's like, it's 100%, it's a deal.
Yeah, same. That's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
Well, and if, the same reason that our fathers probably raised us to be successful was because they're not going to cut corners. They were not going to cut corners
right.
for us. Like,
or sugarcoat it or make it easy. It is what it is, and you're going to have to do it. And if you don't succeed, then you weren't. What I was told was, if you don't like it or you think it's too hard, then you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur, and you should sell it now and go be an employee, because obviously you can't handle it. It was one evening with my father, and I was just like, and he was like, and there will be no more crying. I want to see no more tears. Like, don't come to me crying anymore. Because I cried a lot in the beginning. That being said, we're talking about like how hard this is, but I do think that this is a fantastic, and your level of hard depends on your situation.
Yeah.
Not everybody has these experiences, but I do think it's a great industry for women and highly recommend it as a career path. And I think you and I are both unicorns. There's not a lot of, I think we both still qualify as younger women in the industry. It's still a predominantly male field, with only like somewhere between 15 and 20% being female. And they don't even have the age demographics on that 15 to 20%. So I would have to guess, if it was 10 are probably over 55, and the other 10% are under 55, right?
Yeah, Barbara, we should get those demographics. We are unicorns. Thank you. I like that.
Yes. Well, no one's logging the data, and I'm a big data. We have data on everything, right? Like,
go get that data.
We need someone to get the data
CFP board. Well, but the tough thing is the CFP board has people that are certified. So that is one step. But people who are running successful business is a different metric.
Yes.
Yeah, based on what's out there.
There's no data.
Yeah, I was recently you could a young thing recently, and I'm like, right, this is the only industry for women where you can be young for so long, because
you can be young until you're 50. We're young things when we hit, and then we hit 50, and we're like, well, now we're the average. Now we're average age. So we have a long time to be young. But I do think it's a great business for women. You don't, as you said, we're small business owners, which throws a whole nother level of difficulty and hardship. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, but we're doing two things. We're running a small business, which is, for anyone who's done it, doesn't matter what industry you're in, it's hard, which is why most small businesses fail, and most don't make it 5 years. And then you're also being a practitioner, which also statistically is hard. And I think the statistics on starting out as a financial advisor, the majority of people also fail in that. So like, you're taking two things that are notoriously hard, but you don't have to be a business owner to be a financial advisor. You can just.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And I think people are realizing that that's a separate skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And, the old model that you and I probably grew up in or learned was like, you got to eat what you kill. So you got to learn how to go get business and be a financial advisor. But back then, the complexities of what you had to deal with. And now I think financial advisors come into the industry, you can plug in with a larger organization and learn to be a financial advisor, because you have to be so adept and like, it's not just investments, it's not selling products, it's advice in behavioral finance and taxes and all risk management, all the components, right? And then dealing with people that, people are hungry for good financial advice.
Absolutely. And so why do you think, I have my reasons why I think this is a great career path for women. Why do you think it's a great career path for women?
One, I think women are well suited, right? Because this involves a complex level of thinking that is part art and part science. And women are excellent in that arena. And also, you have to understand somebody's specific money goals, money story, money background of why I think that we do. And then you have to help them bridge that gap between what will get them to their goal and what they're coming into in what their relationship with money is, right? So women are going to take that extra listen and that extra filter. So I think women are well suited for it. I think that's no secret. The industry is kind of, coming to about that. But also I think that it is good for women in the fact that if you do become an entrepreneur, you set your own terms.
So as like you have children, so having children, do you think do you think it's easier maybe as a working mother with this type of business versus maybe corporate America?
Yeah, I do. I think it depends on how you approach it too. If you grind it out and build your business kind of when they're younger, then you can be around a little bit more. So different terms of that. And also you can choose if you want to be very successful and work part-time, you can do that. If you want to be, running the business and working all the time, you can choose to do that too. And I think there's more flexibility, right? So I do try to plan my work around my kids' activities, so I can be at whatever XYZ program situation that they have. So I think it is good in that way. Also think it's fulfilling. I think women want to do something that's meaningful. And so I think this is a very rewarding career. It's hard in that way because women become emotionally involved and your clients become, their heartaches are your heartaches, their joys are your, so you sort of shoulder some of that as well. But yeah, I think it's great.
I agree. I think that women, from what I've seen, really want to have a career where they have impact. And this is one where you can have huge, tangible impact. And I also like that it can be flexible because I feel like I hear all the time of women going, they have kids and they realize their existing career path isn't going to be suitable because they want to have more time, right? They want to be able to go to the dance recital or the soccer game or the PTA meeting, and their existing role is like very firm of like, these are the hours, there isn't any flexibility. So I always hear a lot of women being like, I'm going to go into real estate, unlimited income, flexible hours. And I'm like, why not personal finance, unlimited income, flexible hours? And the path to success, I think, is a little bit easier because it's not transactional, and you can build a recurring revenue business. And you could say, I'm comfortable with 100,000 of income, or I'm comfortable with 150 or 200 or 250, or however hard you want to work, depending on the income level that you want and the lifestyle you want. You can do it versus, in my opinion, I'm not in real estate, obviously, but it's not recurring in real estate. You have to sell another house to get another check.
Yeah. And it's not as flexible. I mean, like anyone who's ever bought a house, why does that always happen at 9:30 at night when it's like whatever that contract is due? Like, I have a good friend who's a realtor, and like she walked into an event and she's like, I didn't bring my phone. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Because it's like every real estate seems like this like tantalizing, like it seems flexible. But like, is it really? I don't know.
No, it doesn't seem like it. And also people always want to see houses on Saturday and Sundays.
Sunday. Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, because at least with ours, yes, do we work in the evening sometimes? Absolutely, people want to see you after work. But the market is only open for a set period of time, and it's not on weekends ever.
Yeah. And then like, for years I've tried not to see clients on Fridays. Like I really don't work on Fridays that much. It's funny, ironically, this Friday I am because it's the end of the year and I'm delivering a financial plan and like I want to, but I also want to disappear for a little bit at the end of the year when my kids are off.
Well, Yeah, I agree. I like the flexibility. And I think it's like anything in life, it's realistic, right? So if you're in a building phase of your business, it's not going to be as flexible. But once again, that's up to you, whether you're building or you're kind of cruising. So totally determined by you. So what are your future goals for the business?
Ooh, I would like to have a wider reach in
Hmm.
terms of, the thing about a wealth management is people have to have some financial complexities or some, even though we offer financial planning for a fee. So sometimes DIYers will come to us for just like a well check or a validation. But generally, you have to have some outlay. And I want to help people understand money at the beginning. I really
Hmm.
desire for people to have a greater financial wellness. And so I'd like to do wider reach. I've written a children's book.
Oh,
So
fun.
it's not fully published yet, but it's in progress. So I want children to understand money a little differently. So I would say my goals for the business would include just some kind of different endeavors to reach more people.
So I'm going to ask you, I like to always wrap it up with what your favorite book, ideally personal finance or entrepreneurial. I'll say, but don't say your children's book because we'll already link that when it comes out. So any
Don't
like
say what?
not your, we'll link your children's book because I think that's great. But so
Oh,
another favorite book like that you maybe used to like further your knowledge of personal finance or entrepreneurship or business ownership. Do you have like a go-to
yes,
book or
I have
podcast?
there are a few. Okay, so I thought about this a little bit ahead of time. So I would say if you're thinking like as a practitioner, but you want to be an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
the E-Myth is a must read.
I'm just looking.
I'm sure
I
people have,
have, yeah, I have the E-Myth, but it's on my other my other
yeah, the
bookshelf. Okay, I
E-Myth.
have that.
And also another one that I think is fantastic is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Oh, I don't have that one. Okay, War of Art.
Okay, that is like a must. And then I think the most recent kind of anyone can read book, it's like great just about money, is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Great read.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, because money ties in so much to psychology. I don't think
Yeah. Yeah.
people
So
realize
that's
it.
anyone that's an advisor should read that. Anyone that's not an advisor should read that because I really like the way that, and there's some good concrete examples.
Hmm.
There's no other thing in life that you can be good at or not good at that's not based on education or skill. It's purely behavioral. And so they talk about it in a way that has some great examples. And then also, I do want to mention I had a friend who wrote a book. If you're interested in becoming a financial advisor, the Financial Advisor Field Guide by Rob
Oh,
Yarrow. It's great. Mm-hmm.
okay. Yeah, I think that there isn't enough information what you need to do to be an advisor and other people's experience. You can learn a lot by what other people have done and what worked for them on how they grow their practice, how they hire, how they get into it, how they find a specialty. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. So those are my go-tos.
Perfect. Well, Charlotte, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I hope you have a great rest of the year.
Thank
And to all
you.
your listeners, thank you for listening. And it was nice to speak with you today.
Yes, and for all of our lovely listeners, you can find our most up-to-date information on Instagram at the Future Rich Podcast, and we will be sure to link Charlotte's information and her firm information. And you were also, was it Investopedia's top
Oh, yeah,
advisor?
100 financial advisors for
Advisors.
2022. Yeah.
Yeah, for 2022. So we'll link that as well.